Now it's time to hear the stories of Utes in their own words. This is Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. Here's your host, Mike Lageschulte.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hopping on board Utes Insider, and it's being brought to you, as always, by Pepsi, the official soft drink of Utah Athletics. You know, one of the best parts about working in college athletics is the people you meet. Some of the athletes who come through the program over the years, it's just so much fun to get to know them and learn about their backgrounds, which vary from, small towns to big cities and different backgrounds. And also, I've enjoyed meeting various coaches over the years. And one that I've really enjoyed especially is Lynne Roberts, our head women's basketball coach. I remember when we hired her back in 2015, right away, I was impressed by her charisma, and I thought, wow, she's got a chance to really come in here and do well. I had a chance to broadcast some of her games the first couple of years. In fact, I went to the Pac-12 tournament in Seattle with them back in 2016 and was just, had a chance to visit with her and was just really impressed with her knowledge and just Lynn as a person. And you keep thinking, okay, at some point that breakthrough year is going to come. They almost had it back in 2018-19. It was a 20-win team that had a great start to the Pac-12 conference, but they had some injuries late in the year, and they went from making the tournament to not even making postseason the way it turned out. They were just so thin. They declined to go to the WNIT, and the past couple of years, it's been a little bit of a downward slide. They've had to kind of rebuild some things, but I think this year she's got a team that maybe can be one of her best. The Utes off to a 6-2 record, but a veteran group from last year, 8 winners back, 5 stars, but it's been a young team getting it done for Lynn this year. Of their top 4 scorers, 2 are freshmen, 1's a sophomore. So it's a young group. They're playing well, and I love the way they play. It's a team that averages almost 12 made threes per game, almost 88 points per game. They shoot 38% from 3. It's a fun team to watch, and with 3 non-conference games left, you think, okay, maybe this is a year where they can have a breakthrough year in the Pac-12, which is still good, but maybe not as good as some other years. And this might be a year for Lynne Roberts to make the postseason, NCAAs, and have that breakthrough season. We'll talk to Lynn about this year's team, about her background as a player and coach, and get her thoughts on the Pac-12 as well. Lynne Roberts, head coach of Utah women's basketball, coming up next on Utes Insider.
To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Now, back to more of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi.
And today's show being brought to you by University of Utah Health, the official healthcare provider for the Utes and you. There's only one you. Be treated that way. Visit uvuhealth.org/Utes. We're joined now by a woman who's done just a great job with the women's basketball program. Had a chance to cover some games of hers early on. Was very impressed with the way she went about things. And Lynne Roberts now, a veteran head coach here at the U as she gets underway with her 7th season. Lynn, thanks for hopping on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I can't believe I was just described as a veteran here. I still feel new. It still feels new.
It does for a lot of us in some ways with just, the weirdness of the pandemic and disconnect. And it's been a strange stretch, but I've been looking at your bio this morning. I'm like, wow, you've been here since 2015. And I think anything after 5 years, is considered veteran status. And coaching especially, it's a crazy deal. But, before Lynn, we get into your team, we'll talk about the X's and O's, obviously. But on this show, I like to talk to people about their background and what makes them tick and kind of let people know them a little bit. And since I haven't had you on, I thought, let's just talk about your background before you even stepped on this campus. You grew up in Redding, California, went to Seattle Pacific and graduated from there in 97. And you got into coaching right away. But for you, Lynn, at one point, did you gravitate towards playing basketball over other sports? And at what point did you think, coaching is going to be what I want to do?
Yeah, that's, and I will say, if I didn't coach, I would starve because it's all I've ever done. And truly, I have no other skill sets other than coaching. It's all I've ever done. And I have so much passion for it. I can't imagine doing anything else, but, I grew up and I have 2 older brothers. And so I was just around sports my whole life and spent a lot of my childhood either watching them play baseball or football or basketball or whatever, just in the bleachers. And it was just always kind of, I was just the kid sister and playing with them on the street and all of that. The good old days of pre-iPads and everything where we just played outside. So I loved every sport I could play. And again, I followed my brothers around everywhere. And so that was just kind of my passion. I loved, my nickname in elementary school was Orbit because I couldn't sit still and I still can't sit still very well. So, I gravitated towards just being active and in athletics. And I played every sport in high school that I could. And I got actually recruited for soccer harder than I got recruited for basketball.
Really?
Yeah, but I was a wimp when it came to the weather, so I didn't want to be outside. And to be honest, that was the distinguisher, which is just kind of pathetic, but why I chose basketball. But I'm glad I did. It all works out. And so recruiting has changed, in the time since I grew up, and it was certainly different than it is now. But I chose Seattle Pacific. I knew I wanted to go to a private school, and it came down to Pepperdine, Seattle Pacific, and St. Mary's College in Moraga, and I chose Seattle and loved it. It was fantastic. Played college basketball there, and and so then my college basketball coach, Gordy Presnell, who's just been a huge impact in my life. He's now the coach at Boise State, has been at Boise State for, 15, 20 years. Just legendary guy, coach. He said to me my junior year of college, like, you should think about coaching. And I wasn't a academic. My passion was not with academics as much as it probably should have been. And so that sounded pretty good to me. So I graduated from college and immediately got into graduate school and was a graduate assistant, and then moved up to an assistant, and then got my first head job coaching a Division II team when I was 25. So very fortunate to be given an opportunity when I was, I didn't know anything. I was pretty young, but talked my way into the job and then just took it and ran with it. So that's kind of how I got into it. And honestly, Mike, like I said at the beginning, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't coach.
I've sat through some cold soccer games, and I don't blame you for that decision. I think you went the right way. There's something about being in the gym in late October and November that's pretty tempting. But, it's interesting, Lynne, because as you said, you were a head coach at age 25. Some coaches have to go out and do something else, whether it's, they get into business or whatever. They have some time away between their playing career and coaching career, whereas you just jumped right in to coaching. And it sounds like, your mentor at Seattle Pacific knew and saw something in you when he said, "Hey, Lynne, have you thought about coaching?" What was it he said to you that made you think, "Hey, listen, he really understands why I should do this"? And was there any convincing involved, or was it kind of like, "Hey, he said it, it clicked"? And what reasons did he give you specifically why he thought you would be a good coach?
Well, I think because, I've never asked him that, to be honest with you, but I think looking back, I think I had such passion for it, for the game and being around it. I was, just obsessed with I loved playing. Like it was what I loved doing. And I still I always say coaching is the next best thing to playing, but there's nothing like playing. Once that's done, it's done. And for me, it is done. Let me tell you, I can still shoot it a little bit, but anything other than that, it's like, whew. But I think he just saw my passion, and I was also I had changed my major a bunch of times. I wasn't sure. And it was kind of the first time someone had said to me, I think you'd be really good at this. And I thought, okay, sweet. So, but it wasn't glamorous. My first 2 years, I worked at a grocery store in the morning and then went to practice, and then I went to grad school at night, and barely had enough money to buy top ramen, and but it was awesome. It was a great experience. It was back when you're doing it for no other reason other than you're just purely passionate about it, and that's kind of how I've kind of kept that perspective. Tried to keep that perspective as much as I can, because I look back at some of I've been in some big games and played in some huge arenas, but the game is the same. And in those kind of smaller moments where there's not much press, not much interest, I still have the same amount of passion. And some of those wins were just as rewarding as the ones here.
You know how it works, Lynne. You can get into coaching and want to do it, but the results are where it all is. And really the results come from connecting with your players and having that, whatever it is, to connect with your players and push them and drive them and know how to run a program and become a head coach. At what point for you did you realize, you know what? I'm really good at this. This is something I really want to do, not just want to do, but can do at a high level. Did you have a moment or a series of moments, maybe early on before you got to Utah, where that happened for you?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have always had a healthy dose of confidence in my ability, but also a very healthy dose of humility as well. And so, I probably could have even still a little more just kind of swagger but it keeps me hungry. like the humility and kind of the, not quite there yet, haven't quite gotten there yet, keeps me pursuing. And I don't know what there looks like or what it might feel like, but because I think in the eyes of others, like you are there, but to me, I keep climbing. So I don't know that I have ever felt completely like I'm at the top of the mountain and at all. And that I'm grateful for that, because that's what keeps me going, is that competitiveness and the push to keep climbing a mountain. But I've always felt like I can do this. And, coaching is at this level, particularly it's managing people, whether it's your players, your staff, other areas of a robust athletic department. It's basic people skills and knowing how to push buttons and or back up or advocate or not, and how to motivate, how to encourage. It's just you're kind of a CEO of a small little thing. And that just becomes leadership. So I've always kind of had confidence in my leadership ability and my ability to kind of, manipulate is not the right word, but because that has negative connotations, but get people to cross, go to the other side of the street if I can get in front of them to convince them to do so. So that's I've always kind of had a healthy dose of that, but also very healthy dose of humility of, I certainly don't think I've arrived.
Well, you got a great team this year. Maybe this is your season where it all comes together and you make that moment happen for you where you think, okay, if we're not all the way there, we're definitely getting close. You've got 8 letter winners back from last year, 5 stars back from a team that had a good season in the pandemic. Let's talk about your 21-22 squad. Pretty good start, 6-2. Just talk about your best players and sort of your outlook for this year's team.
Yeah, this year's been, last year was so brutal for everyone in the world in terms of just how to navigate through your daily operations in a pandemic. And when you're talking about sports and leadership and all the things that go with a team sport, a pandemic is not conducive to doing it well. And so it was hard. So this year has been refreshing for me. It's been really fun to, this is a really good group, and we've got some very, very talented new guys that are, Gianna Neepkins was just named Pac-12 Freshman of the Week. We're starting 2 freshmen. We've got a lot of exciting pieces. I think, we lost to BYU last weekend, and I thought you saw, experience versus kind of youth. They're very good. This is the best team I've seen BYU have. But their backcourt's been playing together for 4 years, and you could really see it. So we're very talented, a lot of potential, still young. So there's going to be those moments. But man, these guys are working so hard, and they want to do it, like what you talked about. Get the program over the hump. And my timing, as I've shared, has been tough in joining the Pac-12 because it has every year it gets better and better. And so leapfrogging people, which is what you have to do to climb, is harder when everybody, everyone's just continually, just incrementally getting a little bit better. And the Pac-12 programs are really putting resources to women's basketball, whether it's the hiring processes or the budgets or whatever. And so the recruiting just continues to get better and better. And, a high tide rises all ships, and we're certainly getting better too. But it's competitive, Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so competitive. It's ridiculous. Like I just saw, for an example, for the recruiting class of 2022, which we all just signed in November for basketball. Number 1 in the country was UConn, and then 2 through 7 were all Pac-12 schools ranked recruiting classes. So it just keeps getting better and better. And we're ranked, I think our recruiting class is like 29th, which is pretty good.
Right.
But it's very good, but we're not top 10 like 6 other schools are. So it's just kind of crazy how good it is. But it's exciting. That's what we signed up for. But I really like this team, and they're starting to believe a little bit in what we're capable of doing. So, one at a time. We've got 3 games left non-conference before Pac-12, and then the real fun starts after Christmas. So we'll just take it one at a time and see how we go.
Visiting with Utah women's basketball head coach Lynne Roberts in her 7th season at Utah. And Lynne, your comment about the Pac-12 could not have been more true. I remember when we hired you, and I thought, okay, this woman is charismatic. She can sell this program. She can get recruits. She's been successful. But, man, it's a tough time to join the Pac-12 because all these schools that were just okay, everyone at the same time seemingly just said, hey, let's get after it, And Stanford's always been good, and there's always been those programs, Oregon. But, man, the league from top to bottom has just been so good during your time here. It has just been a ridiculous conference schedule to work your way through. There's not many breaks, where you can say, okay.
There's not a single break. And to your point, Mike, that there's an insane stat. So in the last 6 years, which is my 6 years, the women's basketball Final Four has had 5 different Pac-12 teams in it.
Wow.
So if you think about in men's basketball, like who from the Big 12 is making the Final Four? Oh, it's always Kansas, or it might be Baylor.
Right.
And the ACC, well, it's going to be Duke. It might be North Carolina. But to have 5 different teams in 6 years, I mean, that's just crazy. And that just tells you the depth of the league and just how good it is. But the opportunity is there too. If you have support and with your administration, your school, if you're getting the support like the other schools are, then you can do it too. So that's the exciting part. There's opportunity.
How do you get a team ready for that gauntlet? I mean, you can schedule your non-conference schedule, and you can schedule games kind of as you want them. You can challenge yourselves. You can have some breaks where you can kind of work on stuff and work on you for a few days, if you know what I'm saying. But in terms of when that schedule starts, how do you condition your team to be ready for what they're going to face here in a few weeks?
Well, you can't duplicate it, certainly. And a lot of home court advantages too, in terms of, Oregon averages over 10,000 fans, Arizona, 10,000. There's a lot of arenas where you can't even, our players never played anything like that. We get 4,000 or 5,000, which is awesome, but we're talking double and not cheering for us. So you can't really duplicate some of that, but I think you can make practices hard. And then just focusing on the process, not focusing on results so much, not getting them so amped that it's about winning or losing. It's got to be about improvement and little things they can control during the game. Because otherwise it just can get kind of overwhelming. You can get just steamrolled. And mental toughness, because win or lose, the next game in 36 hours is going to be just as hard. So, whether you win at Oregon or lose at Oregon, 36 hours later, you got to play at Oregon State in front of just as many fans against just as good of a team. So there's no time to really celebrate. There's no time to really, lick your wounds. You've just got to, pick yourself up again and go after it. And so if you want to be the best, then you got to compete and coach against the best and with the best. And that's certainly what our conference is in women's basketball. It's crazy good.
Yeah, sure has been. Well, Lynne, let's talk about your players a bit. Kimberly Martin, I know, has been battling back from injury and has been limited somewhat, but Brenna Maxwell has played a lot of basketball for you now, a junior. She's your top scorer, 13.4 points a game. Tell us about how Kimberly's coming along and how Brenna's been playing for you.
Well, we'll start with Kimberly. Kimberly's been battling injury with her knee, and so she is actually, we kind of shut her down for a little bit here. Just to try to get some rest on those things and on her knees. And so, she is out right now, and, will be for the foreseeable future. Just, we got to get her healthy. And then, which is a bummer, but it is definitely the best for her and for the team. Cause I don't want, she doesn't feel very good on those legs. So we need to rest her and get her back whenever that may be. And then Brenna's just a microwave of scoring. She can score so fast and in such a hurry. It's fun to see her. She's just getting better and better, and she's playing a lot more under control. We have more depth around her this year, so she doesn't have to create her own shot as much as she did last year and get gassed doing so. So, she's incredibly efficient. She's only averaging 21 minutes a game, but, just shooting incredibly well. And she's tough. She's all Pac-12 2 years in a row, and for good reason.
I watch a team playing. It's like watching candy being thrown out at a parade. There's always stuff in the air. I mean, you're shooting threes, Lynne, at a prolific rate. You're almost nearly double your opponents in terms of attempts, more than doubles in threes made this year. Was that a personnel thing? Was it something you thought, hey, with this group, again, would work well? What sort of led to that type of an offense for this group?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's a couple things. One, and this, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but 3 is more than 2.
Yes.
And it's just kind of simple analytics. If you watch the NBA, that's what they're doing. It's layups or 3s, and we'll take 2s, but pull up shots if that's what all we can take. But we want to try to get just it's our effective field goal percentage, our points per possession, all of that. Like right now, we have the number 1 offense in the country in terms of efficiency, effective field goal percentage, and points per possession. So we can score it. And part of it is personnel. I knew that coming into the year that the majority of our scoring potential was from our perimeter players. So just running a system that can play into their strengths. And it again, it's not live and die by the 3. It's want to take great 3s. So if we don't have great 3s, that means that something else is going to be open that we'll take. If defenses want to stay out on our shooters, and that opens up the lane for us to score inside. So it's not we have to shoot them, but the system certainly opens things up. And it's just simple math of points per possession, and 3s are worth more than 2.
There you go.
And then we've got the kids, that can knock it down, and they're feeling confident, and they know what a great shot is. And so they're taking it without thinking, which is the best time.
Sometimes when you shoot as many 3s as you do, rebounding can suffer a bit because you're so perimeter oriented, but you've held your own there. You're plus 11.1 in rebound margin. Do you feel like that's a good number and your team can sustain that the rest of the way?
I hope so. I think it's going to be harder in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Just there's more size, but long shots equal long rebounds, and we've done a nice job of chasing those down. We're sending 4 people to the boards this year and just crashing like crazy. And then defensive rebounding, we've made it an emphasis, and the players have bought into it. So, size certainly helps in rebounding. It's certainly a variable, but a bigger variable is heart and desire and willpower. And they're showing that they have that. So it's also kind of rebounding by committee. We're not relying on one person to, have 12 or more a game. If everybody can get 3, 4, or 5, then we're going to do just fine.
Yeah, I've got that. I think there's 5 players with 3.4 rebounds a game or more on this team. So as you said, it's been by committee and everyone's doing their part. So, well, then before I let you go, Pac-12 conference play just around the way. You've got some non-conference games against Cal State Fullerton coming up at home on Friday. You have Utah Valley in the building on Saturday, December 18th. You're at Oklahoma the 21st of December before you open up against Oregon on the road, New Year's Eve in Eugene, and then the Pac-12 starts. And you and I talked about the league. It's good this year, but maybe not as in terms of ranked teams as it's been other years. You've got Stanford ranked 5th, Arizona 6th, and then you drop down to Oregon State 23rd, Colorado 25th, Oregon, UCLA, Washington State receiving votes. But there have been years where there's been more teams in the top 25 and higher in those rankings. It might be a year where a team like yourselves that are playing pretty well have a chance to maybe do a little better than past years. As you look at the league this year, Lynn, and where your team can maybe wind up, what's your outlook at this point?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. Last year there was only one weekend in Pac-12 play that we didn't play at least one team in the top 10. So every weekend we played somebody in the top 10, which is just ridiculous, right? And this year, some teams have had some injuries and they've had some tough non-conference losses, kind of out of character. And so, I think we look at that and think, okay. But again, we've got to just take it one at a time. I think with how good the league is and the strength of schedules and everything, I think, this could be a year we get 7 teams in the tournament, 7 or 8 teams. And we certainly have plans on being one of those. So that's the goal. There's no secret about it. And it's going to be hard to do, it's going to take us staying healthy and all that other good stuff, just like everybody else. But I certainly think it's achievable, and that's what we're chasing.
Well, Lynn, your team's been a fun watch. You're averaging almost 88 points a game. You're making almost 12 three-pointers per game. It's a fun style of play to watch, and a good start, 6-2 at this point with, again, 3 non-conference games left before you hit the Pac-12 gauntlet in a few weeks. Lynn, great to talk to you, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you having me on.
Great to be with you. That's Lynne Roberts, head coach of the Utah women's basketball team. Back to wrap things up in just a moment.
For more on Utah athletics, including up-to-date schedules and ticket information, log on to utahutes.com. Now back to more of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi.
And my thanks once again to Lynne Roberts, head coach of Utah women's basketball, for dropping by and With that stat she gave me, 5 different Pac-12 teams have been to the Final Four in recent years. I knew it was an impressive number, but I lost sight of that stat. I mean, to have a dominant team, like you said, like, you've got your Dukes and Carolinas from the ACC that go all the time to the Final Four, but to have 5 different teams in your league be there in recent years, and it's not uncommon to see 6 or 7 Pac-12 teams ranked in the top 25 for women's basketball. It is a tough conference, and she's done well. She's had good recruiting classes, had some good runs with this group, and now in year 7, hopefully this is the year where she can make the NCAA tournament, and it's a fun group to watch. So as we talked during our interview, 3 non-conference games left. Again, Cal State Fulton comes into the Huntsman Center on Friday at 7. Utah Valley is here Saturday the 18th. They have a non-conference game in Oklahoma, and then league play gets underway. So good luck to Lynne Roberts. They are a fun watch. Come out and enjoy them if you can once we get to the latter stages of December and into conference play in January for Utah women's basketball. That will do it for today's show. Thanks to Mike Gillen for his technical expertise, and thanks again to Lynne Roberts for dropping by. I'm Mike Lageschulte. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.